It's a very interesting scenario when they joke about my accent, but I do speak Sinhala, but I don't feel comfortable speaking Sinhala.
How do you feel about you being adopted?
So I don't feel adopted at all. I feel trafficked. I started to question this very, very early at age, and I'm one of the youngest people that ever requested a reunification. I didn't grow up with this adoption narrative where I was saved and I was having this beautiful life. I was sort of suffering because I realized that I was away from my roots. I was away from my family in Sri Lanka, and I wanted to know how my mother was doing. And I couldn't comprehend the thought of everyone caring for me, but leaving my mother behind because she was left to suffer from a life that I was saved from. So if everyone was caring for her, this woman that I've carried on a child for 9 months and was breastfeeding and having these challenges, I couldn't understand why they saved me from someone who was breastfeeding me and really trying everything in her power to take care of me. So that sort of feeling led me into a depression very early because I knew that my mother might be somewhere suffering.
Hi everybody, I'm here with Priyangika Samanthie, a Sri Lankan woman living in Norway, and she's today with me, joining with me from Colombo, where she visited to lodge a complaint about some serious fraud that she has been investigating. Hi Priyanka.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, tell me, what is it? Why did you come to why did you lodge a complaint with the Criminal Investigation Department or CID today?
So today I lodged a complaint based on my own documents in the adoption scene in 1992. And based on the investigation that I've done to my own case and other people have done based on my documents, it seems to be fraudulent document and an illegal adoption, where my mother did not give any consent for a permanent adoption for a foreign couple, but were told that otherwise, that she was going to live in an alternative care home in Sri Lanka with NGOs. So I would want CID to do a full investigation on how it's possible to issue a passport based on fraudulent documents, but also issue court documents, also issue court document that the adoption has been based on, and it doesn't seem to be registered in the court.
So let me get this clear. You were adopted by a Norwegian couple at which age? How old were you?
At the time I was adopted, I was 7 weeks old, and I came to Norway in November 1992. And they spent about 5 weeks in the court in Colombo District Court, where they finalized adoption, which went through Salvation Army Orphanage in Colombo. When they were going through this adoption process, they experienced some illegal practices, such as my lawyer giving an option of shortening down their stay and being able to bribe him to do the court case faster, but they had no idea that my mother was not giving a consent for the adoption. So they went on about the case and were told that she was understanding that there was a permanent adoption for a foreign couple, while my mother was told something else by the translator.
How did you find this out?
At the time I was 7, I asked for a reunification through approaching the Norwegian government with the help of my adoptive father. And he tried his best to assist me and write to the government, but also write to the reunification program that we have in Norway. And they answered 1.5 years later that I was too young and could not be reunited or deported as I was wishing at the time. And then time went on. I went through different searches based on my own documents. And then people who were assisting me with the research in Colombo told me that they could find my birth certificate in the birth certificate office, and they could find my name in the hospital book, but they could not find my legal document in court nor my adoption file. So At the time I was 15, 16, I was told that it seemed to be a fraudulent case. And they also informed me about the illegal market of babies, such as baby farms and baby rackets.
So do you think, or did you find out anything to do with baby farms and your case?
So in my case, there is no baby rackets or baby farms involved. What has happened in my case, from the perspective of my mother, was that hospital workers tried to take me away from her. And when she resisted and told them that she didn't want to give her child up for permanent adoption, she was asked to leave the hospital with the baby. She went back home and she didn't have anywhere to go because of some family matter. And she approached the person that she was living with at the time, which was a Salvation Army worker in the orphanage. And she told her that she would be able to go and live at the Salvation Army and find some alternative care. And she moved into the Salvation Army with that thought in mind and was assisted by the Salvation Army. Unfortunately, the Salvation Army was assisting my mother with care, but with the hope that she was going to give up the child for permanent adoption. So they contacted the Norwegian parents and organization and told them that there was a child that was ready to be given for permanent adoption. And the parents came down to Colombo, and they were able to start this court process and bring me at the time back to Norway.
But I have to, at the same time, I had to tell my viewers that this allegation is an allegation at the moment. You have lodged a complaint and it is being investigated. I hope, and we hope that it will be investigated. Are you in touch with your birth mother now?
I was in touch with my birth mother. We used to live together in Sri Lanka, and I spent about some years with her before she passed away, unfortunately, in 2018.
So your mother told you the whole story.
So when I was reunited with my mother, she used to ask me these questions if I was up country, and I didn't understand what she was talking about. And she thought that Norway was up country because she didn't understand what I was referring to when I told her that I was in Europe and had been growing up in Norway. She was very irritated that I didn't speak Sinhala well enough. So when I told her that it's even profound that I understand Sinhala, she wasn't impressed because she thought I was in the country. And she told me that the Norwegian parents had cheated her because she was informed that she was going to live with them and being taken care of. And so she felt as though they had cheated her with this agreement of giving her 1 lakh, and she was going to live with the NGOs and they were going to assist her with childcare, and then she was going to take the child back to her house or the new situation she would be having at the time. So when she told me her story, it didn't match the scenario that I had been growing up with, and I didn't really know what to believe. But then all of the accusations that she came with, I found proof that was supporting of that story. And as time went on, I could also see her trauma reactions to the story and how she was responding to the story. And I went back to my adoptive parents and I asked them how they experienced this process, and they told that they would never have went about this adoption process if they were informed that the mother was not 100% agreeing with this adoption process. And they were informed at the time that she was informed about this permanent adoption, and that they had to trust the system. They had to trust this translator translating the correct information, but also they had to put faith and trust into the government that they would never do such thing to the children of Sri Lanka and Norway.
And did your adopted parents also help your search of your birth mother?
So my adoptive father, he wrote the application to access my file when I was 7. So he tried his best to assist me with this. During the time I was searching, they tried to connect me with my roots. They tried to assist me with the care and also have these preparation conversations that it might be very hard for me to be reunited and reclaim my roots, and try to prepare me the whole time. And I think that was a very important step in the reunification as well. But unfortunately, they can only tell me about my origin, but they're not allowed by the adoption law to assist me in a reunification. So the fact that he even wrote the letter is not really allowed. But he did it anyway because he saw the need of the child, which was me. And he also wanted to see if he can get some information to clear out the case, because I had the feeling from the age of 3 that I was kidnapped. And they wanted to understand that feeling as well, because I was too young at the time to even know my own story. So I shouldn't be having such feelings.
Priyanka, I understand that having gone through this process, you found out a lot of information, a lot of fraudulent activities, and you have also helped others.
At the time I was 13, I got all these requests from the biological parents in Sri Lanka who had lost their children for the adoption market unwillingly. And I didn't understand at the time what they were talking about. And the person that was translating for me, when they wrote to me in Sinhala, he thought they were misunderstanding the word adoption with kidnapping. So we were a little bit skeptical to their approach to this, but we wanted to help them and see if we could help them with any way of reunification. So I started assisting other people, especially then biological parents, with the reunification. And then as we went on, I came over their documents and started to study the market of adoption, and had to inform them that I then I had to inform them that I started to see this pattern of documents repeating themselves, and that illegal documents were being used for different cases. And it was repeating numbers and names and birthdays and receipts that shouldn't have been in the files. And at the time, I didn't really understand how it was connected to a market, but by assisting these adoptees, I could also see the market of adoption, and also see how they were affected while they had been reunited with false parents or pretending parents, as we call it in the adoption scene. And within I was 18, I had reunited 100 people, but I had never reunited myself yet. So it was really a mental and emotional toll going on me.
Now that you lodged the complaint with the CID, I mean, what was their response? Do you expect some outcome soon?
So the CID told me directly that we are coming very late with the complaint, but then they also understood the fact that I was a child when I was adopted. It took a great amount of time before I was able to access my own documents. I can only access my documents when I'm 18. And they also understood that as a child and as a youth and as a young adult, you don't think about filing a complaint to CID immediately. They had some compassion for the case, but they told me directly that it's going to be a difficult case to investigate because it's so long time ago. But according to the law in Sri Lanka, the case files should be there for 30 years. So they should be able to trace my documents. And the fact that I could never find my documents by the age of 15 even for court shows that something must have happened in the case. So I can see some curiosity about the case, and they are going to take it into consideration. But they were very honest with me that it is the first time in history that someone has filed a complaint to Sri Lankan authorities to investigate an adoption fraud case locally. So I'm very nervous to see if they were even able. I'm very nervous to see if they're even able to go on forward, because as the first case, I'm unsure if they are aware of how you investigate this. Because I can see in police reports all the time that the police use wrong terms in the adoption scene. And as a researcher, we have different terms as baby racket and baby farm. So they use the word baby farm very freely, but it's actually a racket.
The police in Sri Lanka.
Yes. So I'm very nervous about seeing how they're going to investigate this. And also the people that I'm accusing is rooted in the system here. And it's powerful people involved with the illegal market of the adoption fraud. So we will see how it's going to end up.
You're going to go back to Norway soon. And what happens thereafter? I mean, would you follow it up?
So in Norway, I have a position of holding the Norwegian authorities responsible for the adoption scandal in general. So I've studied 37 countries of adoption, and I'm trying to hold the system accountable for going into countries and taking children back to Europe without having a proper aftercare system. They don't have any aftercare system, which is against the adoption law internationally, but also it violates the law of the different countries that they're taking children from. So I've requested through the NGO that I have in Norway that they're going to do a proper investigation of all the adoptions that have happened for 70 years. And by doing this investigation, they could also compare it to the different countries that is going to investigate the fraud that has taken place in the countries of birth. So I will hold the parties accountable. When I land on Friday, I'm already going to the parliament on Monday to speak with political parties. So I have 2 government meetings next week where I'm going to meet them and talk about the adoption fraud and assist them with the investigation going forward. But in Europe, I'm not met with the same warmth that I'm met with in Sri Lanka, even though people are struggling to understand my critical view of adoption because of the current financial crisis in Sri Lanka and because we gained so much by going to Europe. People sort of feel from my story sometimes and have compassion for it. But when I do it in Europe, they sort of see me as this ungrateful adoptee who is not just embracing her new life and culture. And
I actually wanted to ask you that, Priyangika, how do you feel? Are you angry? Are you sad? How do you feel about you being adopted?
So I don't feel adopted at all. I feel trafficked and I feel like I was misplaced on purpose. So I don't really relate to the feeling of adoption that I can see other people who's legally adopted sons of sense. And because I started to question this very, very early at age, and I'm one of the youngest people that ever requested a reunification, I didn't grow up with this adoption narrative where I was saved and I was having this beautiful life. I was sort of suffering because I realized that I was away from my roots. I was away from my family in Sri Lanka, and I wanted to know how my mother was doing. And I couldn't comprehend the thought of everyone caring for me, but leaving my mother behind because she was left to suffer from a life that I was saved from. So if everyone was caring for her, this woman that I've carried on a child for 9 months and was breastfeeding and having these challenges, I couldn't understand why they saved me from someone who was breastfeeding me and really trying everything in her power to take care of me. So that sort of feeling led me into a depression very early because I knew that my mother might be somewhere suffering. But then I also had this splitted feeling because I had these beautiful people in Europe that I was caring so much for, and they were caring so much for me. And I have gained a lot of opportunities. The fact that I'm going to the parliament next week and the media is listening to me now, and I have 2 beautiful children in Europe that I care so much about, and they have a beautiful life as well. It is a splitted emotional feeling, but I have always seen it as my main aim in life to rebuild my life in Sri Lanka. And my whole work is surrounded by the Sri Lankan culture and Sri Lankan people. So it wouldn't make sense for me in the long run to be in Europe. It
By
would
now, do
make
you
sense for me
speak
to live.
any Sinhala at all? Do you speak any
I
Sinhala?
only speak with people that I'm very, very close with, but I do get bullied a lot because of my accent. So it's a great thing because when they joke with me and they're like, "Oh, you're that adopted child," I'm actually adopted. So it's a very interesting scenario when they joke about my accent. But I do speak Sinhala, but I don't feel comfortable speaking Sinhala.
How did you feel? What was your emotion when you first met your mother, birth mother?
I wish I could tell you this romanticized scenario where we were running towards each other and we had this beautiful reconnection moment. But obviously, because she knew the truth about the story, she was very much affected by it and had been shamed and spoken down on losing a child for this permanent adoption as a kidnapping. But she looked at me and she wanted to connect with me so badly, but we needed time and we needed to give each other time. So she has been my greatest lesson of being patient with our parents, because I saw her coming back to life over time, and the spark in her eyes came back, but I just needed to give her a little bit of time and be the support system that she didn't have. And then we were able to reconnect, and we have had these beautiful years together, and for that I'm forever grateful for. But I wouldn't say that it was an easy journey, but it surely was worth it.
Priyangika, thank you very much, and I wish you best of luck in your pursuit of justice. And as we understand, you are not doing this only for yourself, and you are working on behalf of many others with similar journey, similar experiences. So thank you for your time and good luck.
Thank you so much.